with a nice pink top is with us. So I'd like to welcome you all, and I would especially like to welcome Robert Biswardina, who's going to be facilitating our session. As you gather just by the conversation we're having as you come in, it is relatively relaxed and informal and highly interactive. So I will leave Robert to talk to you a bit about that. But as you know, Robert is a researcher, author, and coach, and he's published more than 75 peer-reviewed academic articles. And his books, some of you might be familiar with, I'm sure all of you, The Upside of Your Dark Side in 2014, Positive Provocation, which we were discussing before you came in 2023, and of course his most recent publication, co-authored with Christian 2025. And he's widely considered one of the pioneers of positive psychology coaching. And in 2024, the Thinkers 50 named Robert one of the most influential executive coaches. And he's just returned from London, where he was nominated with Christian by the Thinkers 50 for the 2025 Coaching and Mentoring Award. So welcome, Robert. It's absolutely delightful to have you here and sharing your thoughts. Before I hand over to Robert, I just want to do a little bit of housekeeping. If you could keep yourself on mute, please. If you've got any comments or questions, if you can put them in the chat function. Robert's very comfortable with you putting your raised hand up if you like, so he will respond to that as well. And we will be keeping an eye on the chat function. Please, no use of AI is permitted to record or take notes in these particular sessions. We will be recording the session and providing the recording afterwards, but we will not be providing the slides. Just bear in mind also the recording takes a little bit of a while to come out as well. There will be a lucky draw at the end of 2 members for an e-book of Robert's latest book, Radical Listening. So stay till the end and you'll see if you get one of those. All right, so with not much more ado, I just want to hand over to Robert, and he will guide you about how he would like to run the session. So thanks, Robert, and we'll run through to about 9:25 when I close the session. Thank you. Over to you, Robert.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Hi, everyone. I appreciate you getting up early if you got up earlier than you normally do, or I appreciate you just showing up if showing up is not something you normally do. Of everything that Vicky said about me, the part of my bio that tickles me most is that she was basically like, look at him. You know he's casual. Like, just look at him. Like, I've been like, you get it. Like, you can do whatever you want. Just everyone exhale, take a deep breath, because look at the guy. And it's 100% true. I'll give you 2 examples of this. She mentioned that I was at the Thinkers 50 fancy gala thing where I lost for the 2nd year in a row. And I wore a tuxedo. I'm 53 years old. It's the first time I've ever had a tuxedo on. And it took me like 20 minutes to do my tie in the bathroom while I was talking to someone. It was a clip-on tie. I wasn't tying a bow tie. It was just a clip-on and I couldn't get it on. And finally a guy said to me, like, what is wrong with you? And I was like, I don't know how to do this. Like, help. And I said, all you have to do is take one look at me and you know in your heart of hearts I've never worn a tuxedo. I'm wearing a hoodie right now. I put this hoodie on because I knew I was doing a professional presentation. I was dressed less casually than that before. Second example, my favorite coaching moment, probably of my 20+ year career, happened last week. My client showed up on Zoom and she said to me, I was going to do my hair. And then I remembered, it's just Robert. I was like, that's what you want. That's what you want with your client. Like, I have achieved that amount of authenticity that my clients like, I don't need to put on any kind of posturing for Robert. Like she was indicating to me right up front how comfortable she feels with me. And I took it in that spirit and we talked about it. I was like, can we just talk about our relationship then for a second, just for 1 minute? Like, because that to me is like the greatest compliment you could possibly give me. So, Vicky, thanks for also giving me that compliment. In part, I'm saying this just so everyone can get a sense of who I am, how I speak, etc. I'm not the kind of person to just launch right in. Well, let's get into my slideshow, and I've got 4 points to give you today. I don't know if you know me or if you know anything about me besides what I'm just saying. But I do have a reputation for saying things that are mildly provocative or slightly different than most people think. And I want to do so in a positive way. If I say things that are different than how you think about coaching, it's not because I'm right and you're wrong. It's because I want you to sit up and just question and be like, oh yeah, let me think about that a little bit. Maybe Robert's right, maybe Robert's wrong, but what I really want for all of us is just to be thinking. And I don't want to assume that you're not a good thinker. I'm going to say things that are a little bit different because I assume that you are a good thinker, really. But I also don't want you to be offended. So if I say something like, I really don't believe in self-limiting beliefs. Now, I know that for some people, that might be like, whoa, 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 time out, Robert. That's a pretty big thing to say. Or if I say, like, I don't know that I believe in human potential. Like, those, I know those are like throw the gauntlet kind of statements. But I would want in every case for you just to be like, I wonder why Robert believes that because he seems reasonable enough. So I'm just curious how he arrived at those conclusions. And that's what I'm going to do during our time together. I'm going to say some things about listening that are going to be a little bit different than what you already know about listening. And the reason I'm doing it is because I believe that the people here are trained as coaches, work as coaches, use coaching skills. I believe that on average, the group of people in this Zoom environment right this second are superior listeners. I think that we have gravitated into this profession and that we so fully practice the skill of listening that we are pretty good at it. I believe that there are other great listeners out in the world, but my guess is you're all pretty good listeners and that you think about the process of listening, which is why I don't want to come to you and say, let's talk about active listening. You should summarize what someone says and clarify, like, did I hear you right? This is what I'm picking up. Do I have that correctly? First of all, I would never in a million years do that with a client. I don't think in 20 years I've ever done that with a client now that I'm thinking about it. Ever. One time. Summarized back to a client a list of what they said and then said, am I hearing that right? The reason is because I was there and I did hear them because they said it and I listened to it. And if I want to demonstrate to them that I heard them, I would react appropriately. So if they said something funny and I laughed, that would be a great demonstration of listening. They'd be like, oh, he's listening. Because when I said something funny, he laughed. They don't need me to say, let me just see if I got this right. So three men walk into a bar. Do I have that right? That's not good listening. The reason I came up with just that notion is I noticed that in my 50 plus years of friendship with people, I've never once done that with a friend. Now, I have clarified with a friend, but typically this is how I do it. What do you mean by that? That's it. What do you mean by that? I didn't say, so I heard you say three different things there. I heard you both prioritize your own self-care and you talked about this and another thing. Do I have that right? No. What do you mean by that? Right? So part of what I'm doing is giving you a sense that I think we can do better when we talk about listening than active listening. I don't think great listening is just eye contact and a bunch of summary. I think it has to do with really carefully taking in what's most important in the moment and responding to it. Some of you met with Christian when he was here, my co-author for the book Radical Listening, and he gave you the whole model, etc. So I'm not going to go over all that ground, but for those of you that weren't with Christian, I'm not going to sort of leave you behind either. I'm going to say one small thing about it. And that is the way our attention works is limited. It would be nice to think that we can just sort of pay attention to everything because we have a mindfulness habit and it's so great. And so I can just get everything. But as a coach, you cannot simultaneously listen to what your client's saying, notice patterns in what your client's saying, identify specific or unusual words and how your client is saying it, notice shifts in their posture and facial expression. Also, notice what they're leaving out of their story. Also, attend to their cultural or other background or contextual information. You can't do that simultaneously. That's way too much information, way too much cognitive load. You could do each one of those things, but you can't do them together. You might even be able to do two or three of them together, just like you could juggle two or three balls, but you probably can't juggle six balls because almost no one can. And here we have the idea that people are selective in their attention and also in their listening. Give you a quick example. Some people are funny. I don't know. Is anyone here funny? Just me. I'm the only one. Matt, did you raise your hand for funny? Because I think you're a little funny. Hi, Matt, by the way. Nice to see you. Um, Mel, perfect. Trying is, half the battle, probably the lesser half, but still. People who are funny listen in a select way. They're not just listening to the whole conversation, they're listening in order to entertain. And what that means is they're paying attention to a select portion of the conversation. And what portion of the conversation is it? It's pauses, spaces, because pauses, those conversational spaces, that's where jokes go. Someone who's funny is probably paying disproportionately more attention to conversational pauses than you typically are, because that's where you would insert a witty comment, quick repartee, a quick joke, whatever it is. But that is like blinders for them as well. Because when they're paying attention to pauses, they're probably not paying attention to something else. So, this is my idea and Christian's idea that your intention as the listener guides your attention. And if you're willing to believe that your attention is not just this unlimited resource where you can just take it all in, no problem, you might as well direct your listening so that you can listen more efficiently. And I think this is actually largely what coaches do. And so I'm going to just throw up a slide here real quickly, just to show you several common intentions or motives for listening. This is not meant to be an exhaustive list, and we have them categorized by type. Um, Here we go. So very quickly go over this with you. You understand it. When we listen in order to accomplish something. We have an intention, something we want to accomplish as a listener. So some of these we think are antisocial, some are pro-social, some are self-focused. Don't get too bent out of shape about the categories. I know people don't like the idea of antisocial, but you listen in an antisocial way all the time. If someone is attacking you and you defend yourself, that is antisocial listening. That is, you're not trying to connect with them, to concede to them. You are actually trying to do something opposed to them. Courtroom attorneys, they listen in particular to undermine an argument. So that's guiding their attention. They're like, where's their spurious content? Where is their weak evidence? Where's their inherent contradiction? And an attorney is listening. They have their ear out specifically for that because that is how you undermine a logical argument. On the pro social side, if you're just trying to relate to someone, your attention is probably narrowed to certain things, commonalities. Oh, I also grew up in Adelaide. Oh, we also share the same hobby. I also have two kids. They're the same ages, right? And you're paying disproportionate amount of attention to potential commonalities because you believe that's how we're going to relate. I think for coaches, we spend a certain amount of time trying to understand the client, trying to learn about the client, right? This is what we think of when we talk about curious listening. I wonder what that's like for you. I wonder how certain you would have to be before you made a decision. I wonder what other ways there would be to look at this, right? Those are all kind of like these wondrous sort of questions that are really about understanding and learning. And when we coach, we are engaging our client in self-directed learning. So we're kind of equipping them with listening for those same types of things, listening for understanding. I think that we don't listen to an entire session just in one mode. I think we flit between motivations. So at one point, you're listening to acknowledge and validate. At another point, you're listening to understand. At another point, you might be listening to challenge, and that you're going to shift across those. But if you do them intentionally, then you can do them, I think, a little bit more efficiently. I'm going to stop there because that's just my very basic introduction to this before we really get into the good stuff. I want to see if there's questions, feedback, comment, examples, complaints from anyone. Vicky.
Yeah. So I'm really interested in the comment you made about, us trying to do everything without listening. I really identified with that because as a coach, you're often sitting there thinking, oh, I should be looking at this and I should be doing this and I should be summarizing this and that. And I really identified with that because I think what it challenges certainly me as a coach is I feel I'm just split in so many different ways instead of having a strong intention of why I'm listening to that person. So I find that quite liberating, actually. It's sort of saying to me, well, no, if you go in with an intention, whether it's pro-social, whatever it is, go in with that intention and be honest or authentic to that intention.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for pointing that out, Vicky. And I think anyone who trains coaches sees this, especially among novice coaches, that the cognitive load is so high as to be unmanageable. I mean, really, what we're asking people to do is all you have to do is be completely present with a neutral beginner's mind, totally emotionally calm, putting your own ideas and agenda outside controlling any impulse to give advice or to solve a problem for the client while listening to them, sifting through what they're saying, looking at patterns and connections and repetition, while also trying to evoke new awarenesses by using definitely open-ended questions that were difficult to answer, while peppering them with some occasional acknowledgments to help encourage them, and sort of balancing support and challenge together while making sure to translate any of these aha moments into the gold of real action for true behavior change. Just do that. And even that, you understand, cannot happen simultaneously. When I'm setting an agenda with a client, I really am kind of in one listening mode. I'm like, what's going on for the client? What's happening here? How are we structuring this session? What are their expectations? How are they feeling right now? I'm listening for a set of things, which is very different in the middle of the session, which feels very expansive and exploratory, and very different than the end of the session, which feels much more nuts and bolts. What you're going to do? What's the plan? What's the support? What's going to happen? All of those are legitimate forms of listening, but I'm just not trying to do it all at once.
There's a
It's
question
one of
here
the
in the
things
chat
with, yeah,
function.
yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead. Who had the question?
Bernie. Oh, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, not so much a question. I was typing it and you were saying basically what I was typing, Vicky.
Ah, Vicky's the worst, always saying what you're trying to type. Um, yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that there's something in coaching culture that we're all expected to be super people, like these, uh, peerless communicators. And I think it's fine to just actually lean into the way that human psychology works, that we do have some limitations, that we are pretty good at what we do. And I think one of the things that would make us good listeners is to be intentional shifters, to be flexible listeners rather than these, giant radar dishes taking everything in at once, for whatever that's worth. I also want to just say that I don't think listening is necessarily just auditory. And when I am saying listening, I'm really talking about something multimodal, multi-channel, multi-sensory. So everyone, this myth about like, oh, I'm a visual learner, I'm a somatic learner, in which there's, no real research support for that, that everyone is a multi-channel learner, that if you can see and hear something both together, that's going to be much better for you than only seeing it or only hearing it. And the more channels you get, the better off you are. So all sighted people are visual learners in addition to auditory learners. So when I'm talking about listening, I'm really talking about taking in, and that could be through sight. So anytime you say to your client, like, I really noticed a shift in your posture there. I couldn't help but notice you looked down as you said that, right? What was going on there? Or I saw a big sigh as you said that. What's that exhale all about? Those are all listening, even though they are technically visually noticing. What I would love to do is have you do some noticing. I'm going to show you an image, and I'd love for you just to take like 30 seconds and write down what you notice. Or if you don't want to write it down, you just do it in your head. It'll be much harder to keep track of, but it's totally fine. I'm open to that. Um, there are no right or wrong answers, because ultimately that's what we're going to be doing here today is how does this directed attention impact what we're noticing and what we're noticing in coaching? So is everyone ready? I'm going to put up a slide. It'll have an image. Okay, here we go. And then we'll spend about 30 seconds on it. Take about 10 more seconds. Okay. Could I just hear from someone, maybe one thing they noticed? You don't have to give me the whole list, just one.
A beautiful garden outside the window.
Beautiful garden. Great. Anyone else?
I
Yeah,
noticed
an interesting
beautiful.
roof outside the window.
So Matt, I just looked up, so you go, and then the other person will go after Matt.
I noticed outside the window an interesting roof structure. Looked Tuscan or Italian. Yeah.
Interesting roof, Tuscan. And who was the other person?
It was me, Catherine. I
Yeah.
noticed lots of internal lights, like mood lighting and the down lights and lights over the oven, but it was also a bit light outside as well.
Okay. So lights, both interior and exterior. And we'll do one more.
I
know-
noticed sorry.
Go.
It's okay. Go ahead.
I noticed there was no people, but evidence of people either about to be there or perhaps they've just been there.
Okay, great. We're already learning so much about noticing as an aspect of listening or taking in. First of all, there are what I would consider nouns, i.e., objects. There are lights. There's a garden. There's a roof. That's kind of like we understand that that's something we're going to notice. You might have said plates, a table, bottles, grapes, whatever it is, right? So everyone hopefully has some of those things on their list. If you didn't notice those things, you're definitely in the wrong field. Next, what we heard from people were also some adjectives that went with them. It was a beautiful garden. It was a Tuscan roof. It was mood lighting. And that's interesting. So let's just think about that as coaches. There would be a school of thought that would tell us that coaches should be very neutral, as if we should only look at nouns without descriptions. I noticed a shift in you. That shift is neither good nor bad. I noticed that you used the word difficult 3 times. I have no judgment about that. I'm just noticing it. That's sort of the noun approach. But then the adjective approach is also quite interesting because we can kind of think, how problematic is it to say that the garden is beautiful or that the bottle is empty or that the plates are uniformly white? And what are the coaching analogs to that? Are there instances that as a coach you might say, that's an interesting idea, and that would be a good thing to do, rather than just, that's an idea, which would be far more neutral, or, but oh, interesting, tell me more, that you have a descriptor on top of it. And then last we heard, and this is also interesting, noticing what's not there. There are no people. And noticing what's not there is typically more difficult than noticing what is there. I used to have a dog long ago, and my dog would sometimes get out and it would go over to my neighbor's house. My neighbor would get very mad at me. And every single time my dog got out, my neighbor would bring the dog to me and yell at me. But there wasn't a single day over the years and years that passed, a day that my dog didn't get out, that my neighbor came over and congratulated me on my dog not getting out that day. The neighbor never came by and said, I happened to notice today that your dog is in. The neighbor could only notice the aberrant thing, the thing that stood out. Your dog is out of place. And we also have that tendency as coaches. It's just harder to see what's not there. There's also other elements of listening. For example, context. Some of you might have thought this kind of seems staged or almost like a magazine photo shoot, something like that. Some of you might even have recognized it. This is from a Nancy Meyers film, It's Complicated. Just so you know, it's complicated. It's a great movie, and it's not just an American thing. It opened #1 in 2012 in Australia. It was the biggest movie that weekend, made $14 million. So even the Australians liked it better than they liked the other movies, just so you know. It's complicated. It's a great romantic comedy, but there are entire blogs devoted to the house, and it's complicated, devoted to this kitchen. I mean, people are really into this kitchen and into this house, the Tuscan roofs, the beautiful garden, right? People love it. If you happen to notice that and recognize it, you're like, oh, this is from that movie. I'd recognize that kitchen anywhere because I watch that movie every time I'm depressed. Then you have an additional piece of information. And this starts getting interesting to me because this runs counter to the idea that coaches are completely neutral and that we know nothing. Just using this as an example, a metaphor, if you happen to know those movies or this particular movie, you have an additional layer of noticing. If you happen to know something about your client's organizational structure or their industry, you might notice more. It doesn't mean that you're going to give them advice or you know more about the industry than they do, but you might just pick up on more. And so this runs kind of counter to the very reasonable advice that we remain neutral. And I think it's just an interesting wrestling match that, yeah, we should be neutral. And it might also be helpful to have some real life experience and some frameworks and some knowledge under our belt. Any questions, comments, reactions to what I'm saying before we do another one of these?
I just have probably, it was a
Yeah.
reaction, I think, to the activity, which is I held myself in the noun space because I was trying not to do interpretations. When you didn't ask me to do that, but that's what I did. So that's
And
what I
it's
picked up on
interesting,
myself.
right? And it's interesting. And I don't have personally a dog in the fight of whether you do interpretation or don't do interpretation. And ultimately, where coaching's concerned, I'd say do what's helpful for the client.
Mm.
And there might be an occasional time that an interpretation is what propels things forward. And there might be a lot of times that that would be contraindicated and you shouldn't do interpretation. And part of coaching mastery, I think, is recognizing the difference between those times and withholding yourself in some cases and taking the risk and stepping forth in the other cases. So the good news for you, Jen, is that we're going to do it again with another image, and you all can notice in any way you want. You can put some parameters on yourself. You can let the parameters off. And because now we're warmed up a little bit because you're coaches, I'm going to make this one a little harder, which is there's just going to be fewer things. Like I put more objects in this image. The next one is a bit more spare. And you'll notice that it will call upon you in a different way to engage with it in a different way. Everyone ready? Cool. Here we go. We'll do 10 more seconds. Okay. So again, just one example, maybe not a whole list. What did you notice?
It was interesting to see because I think again when you notice the context, um, it really alters the lens through which you're seeing everything that's in the image. And the same with the last movie scene and this movie scene, it takes you into a space. And I was really reflecting on what you talked about, you know, how we notice and apply context from the cues that we see, and what assumptions does that lead us to and take us into? What do we become blind to? And what blind spots, you know, might be there because of the context we think
Absolutely. Samantha, this is great. So you recognize the movie
I
that this
think
is
it's
from?
Parasite.
Parasite. That's right, the Korean movie.
Yes,
And
yes.
this is the house from Parasite, and the house itself was almost a character in the movie. And if you happen to know that, one of the things you know is that this is mostly digitally rendered. The couch was made as a bespoke piece of furniture for this house, but most of that room is digitally rendered, but the actual interior furnishings are real. And that just changes the way you look at it. And you could then, it doesn't take much to start thinking about your clients. And you're like, oh, my client's from Singapore. My client is a Malaysian, Singaporean person, a Malay speaker. Now, is that somehow putting blinders on me with regards to their context? Am I making assumptions that they must only be a certain way culturally? Am I also looking for ways that they might deviate from the cultural norms or the cultural stereotypes? You know, and that's exactly what we want to develop some flexibility in, to Samantha's point. Anyone else? Others?
Yeah, Robert, one thing I noticed myself questioning because I couldn't get the context because I didn't know it was from the movie, but I was looking, is it a house? Is it a gallery? What's the person doing outside? There are shoes there, but there's taped paper on the floor. I noticed I was kind of struggling a bit. Well, what's the context? Is it a house or is it a gallery or what? So that's where my train of thought went.
I love it, Catherine. And I like it. I'll bring it back to coaching. Might that be a helpful space to be in as a coach? That's the first thing I would say. To think, I don't know my client. What's going on here? Like, really, although you are expressing confusion and that you are a little lost, you also, that sounds a whole lot like curiosity, like that hunger to figure it out, to find out what's going on. What are all these things? And what if you had that towards your client? What is my client all about? There's this whole universe in front of me that I don't begin to understand. I'm just so hungry to know all the little bits and pieces rather than the certainty of like, oh, I pretty much have my client squared away. I know what they do. I know their role, da, 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 da. So there's something nice about that kind of confused state, I think, potentially. Anyone else?
Um, I can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Um, I I reacted sort of viscerally to the space, like the sparseness, the openness, the loneliness of it. And it felt to me not friendly. I thought I couldn't be there. I couldn't live there in the space. So yeah, that was my reaction. It was sort of more emotional.
I love this, Alex. It's also an important aspect of coaching, I think, and something that none of us mentioned in the first one, the kitchen scene, which is, are we also listening to ourselves? Are we noticing our own shifts? because we're real humans in the coaching relationship. And that was the first thing, Alex, that I noticed too. Even though I've done this activity with people before and I know it, I immediately noticed this kind of calm, lowering energy. And I was like, that place isn't calm. That place isn't low energy. I am. That thing I'm noticing is me. And what a great extra dimension to coaching. As my client talks, I notice I'm feeling anxious. As my client talks, I notice I'm feeling confused. I notice as my client talks, I'm feeling a sigh of relief. That's just an additional piece of information. You don't have to do anything with it, but if you're listening for it, well, isn't that great? The more things that we get to hear and notice, the better potentially. Love it, Alex. Thanks. Anyone else? No one noticed anything else?
I had a random pragmatic noticing, which was how much work it would be to keep those windows and floor clean. Just flicked past.
I love it. That's something that I would call like noticing the common sense. And I know we're not supposed to make assumptions as coaches, but the truth is, if your client says, I just found out my husband was cheating on me and now we're going through a divorce and it's affecting my work, common sense tells you that's a difficult time for the client. You don't have to say, I invite you to tell me whether that's a really positive event in your esteem or a really negative event in your esteem. Like, you understand human nature. You understand that big windows like that are a cleaning headache. You understand that when someone gets a promotion, they might feel more responsibility. You understand that when someone's leading a team, they might care about how they're perceived. Yeah, you can still ask about it. You don't just have to assume it, but it's going to guide your questions. Because unless you're noticing that in the first place, you're not even going to ask about it. But because you understand that that's part of human nature, you get to ask about it, which is kind of nice. That is, you have real world experience that can help inform your questions. The client doesn't have to pick up on it, in which case you would just abandon it if it's not helpful in the moment. But if it is helpful, then great. Does anyone have a reaction to that, what I'm saying? Leonie, I see that you're really, really thinking about it.
Sorry, finally got
Robert?
off mute. Still processing, Robert. Thanks for checking in with me. Loving it. All these different aspects and doing a lot of self-analysis going. So interesting that Alex thought the space was kind of ick, because I'm like, look at all that space, and it's just interesting, isn't it? Just our own reactions. And then I'm thinking, just processing. What am I noticing? What aren't I noticing? What's helpful to a client? What's about me and not about them? Running through all the things. So thank you. Really, really helpful so far.
Cool. Good. I'm glad it's helpful to you. And you don't have to agree with anything that I'm saying. If you afterwards are like, you know what? I think Robert was only right about 25% of that stuff. That's fine with me. I just want you to have thought it through. Let's see. Inger says, noticed it was incomplete. Yeah. So again, that's sort of noticing what's not there, that there seems like maybe more could happen. In a way, your client's incomplete, as are we all. What more could there be? What's the design plan, right? Those kinds of questions can stem out of our noticing. Suzanne, and then we'll move on.
I don't know if it was just me, but I also noticed the image wasn't static. Something else kept sliding across at intermittent, intermittently. So there was like something else impacting the context.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. And so that's like noticing the minutia, right? Like when we get down into the exact word the client used, or, just the very, very small things, which we also want to try to notice from time to time because there's often lots to be mined in that. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Y'all ready for another activity? Good. That's 75% of you. The other 25%, we'll find out. When you go to a conference, I'm just going to show you one of these from a conference in 2024 that I spoke at, and I was speaking on culture and happiness. But the speaker's up there, and there's a graphic recorder who is drawing what the speaker is saying. You've all been to those conferences where someone is drawing in real time and they're putting what the speaker is saying up in words and images. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about? Okay. Uh, Most of you are, some of you aren't. Often at events, there are artists that are capturing what the speaker is talking about. And that was an example from Jessamy Gee, who is an Australian graphic recorder. She's great. What I want to do is I want to teach you graphic recording right now. Now, I know already that's going to get some reactions from some of you. You're going to be like, oh, art, no. You won't have to share it. So I'm just going to say that up front. There won't be any sharing. You can draw stick figures to your heart's content. But I'm just going to take you through literally the world's smallest course on graphic recording. And then I'm going to be saying some things and I'm going to have you graphically record it. It's a noticing activity. Oh, good. Bernie, well, here you go. You are going to get your money's worth, which is to say, free. I'm going to teach you 4 different techniques that graphic recorders use. So when you do your recording, the first thing you can use is words, right? You could actually write words. So, if I gave a talk on coaching, you might write the word coaching. But you can do the words in different ways, right? You could change their font or style. You could change their size. You could change their color. You could change their emphasis through things like underlines. And that would put different weights or importance on the various topics. So words is one of the tools in your toolbox. Arrows is going to be the second. Arrows, pretty self-explanatory. They point to things. They are good for indicating process, relationship, directionality, causality. And again, you can do arrows in different ways. You can do thick arrows, thin arrows, long arrows, multiple arrows, bi-directional arrows with an arrowhead at each end. Your arrows need not be straight. They could be twisted or curvy. And so arrows would be another quick and easy tool for you. Number 3 of 4. We might think of these as emphases, but here I've got a thought bubble, a speaking bubble that you might find in like a cartoon or a comic book, sort of a splash or an explosion. And these are used to also provide emphasis, or in some cases process. You're like, oh, this might be a quote, or this might be what someone thought. Or this might be the big idea because I'm putting the starburst around it, the explosion, to show that it's, it's a big deal. And then the last of your tools, and there are more tools than this, these are just the ones we're going to use for our purposes here. The last of the tools is one you actually know well because you use it on your phone all the time, and it's icons. Icons are just symbols that have agreed upon meaning. So on your phone, you're doing smiley faces and thumbs ups and little kitties and all sorts of, shooting stars or whatever the emojis are. And those emojis have sort of universal significance. That's how they came about. If I say thumbs up to you, no one's like, "What are you talking about, Robert? I've never heard of that." We all know what it potentially indicates. And beyond emojis, we have all sorts of shared icons, right? A light bulb could mean thinking, it could mean an idea, but we typically indicate cognitive processes. The recycle sign, you can see sort of a diploma. Probably most of you recognize that as representing graduation or education or learning, broadly speaking. Um, Oftentimes our road signs, regardless of what country we live in, stop signs, yield signs, things like that have sort of a shared meaning. So you could also use icons or symbols to get across large tranches of meaning in a very, very quick and easy way. Everyone have these written down? Because I'm going to then just speak and you're going to do the graphic recording. So you've got it. Words, arrows, emphases, and icons. And we'll start by just doing a warm up, right? I'm going to do kind of an easy one. You're not going to think it's easy because this is your first time. You're going to be like, "This is so hard, Robert. You're saying so much. How could this be possible?" Yeah, just know ahead of time you're going to do that. I'm going to say this 3 times. So I'm just going to read it the one time, and you're going to be like, "That's too much, Robert. I can never do that." Then I'm going to read it again slowly. And you don't even have to start doing your graphic recording the second time. As I read it slowly the second time, you can kind of think, how am I going to categorize? What am I noticing? How am I parsing this apart? What's going on? And then I'll read it very slowly the third time, and that's when I want you to do the graphic recording. Everyone ready? I'll just let you know what I'm going to read is the Association for Coaches, for Coaching's definition of coaching. Here it is, all at once. This is the part that's going to make your heart flutter and you're going to drop off the call. Personal coaching is a collaborative, solution-focused, results-oriented, and systematic process in which the coach facilitates the enhancement of work performance, life experiences, self-directed learning, and personal growth of the coachee. Whew, already you're like, that's a lot. And because it's a definition, it's like so artificially densely packed. But let me just tell you, there's 2 parts to it. One is a bunch of descriptions of coaching as a process, and one is a description of the relationship of what the coach and the coachee are doing to one another. So here we go. It's a collaborative, solutions-focused, results-oriented, and systematic process in which the coach facilitates enhancement of work performance, life experience, self-directed learning, and personal growth of the coachee. Okay, everyone ready? I'm going to read it the third time, and I'm going to do it really slowly to give you time because I know drawing takes some time. It is a collaborative, solution-focused, results-oriented, systematic process in which the coach facilitates the enhancement of work performance, life experience, self-directed learning, and personal growth of the coachee. Okay. You do not have to show me yours, but I will show you the one I just did while I spoke. See if it can come up. Here we go. Let's see. This is my coach. My coach is doing something, they're facilitating. There's the little client, and then there's the big enhanced client. See how they grew from little to big? And where did they grow? They grew in the areas of work, life, and learning. So you can see I took a lot of complicated things and I just kind of simplified it. What it does, though, is it forces you to make a lot of decisions. And what I find is that people who do this for a living, that is graphic recording, are making a lot of constant decisions on the fly. They're listening well, and they're listening for what's important. How does this concept relate to that concept? What should I leave out? How should I illustrate this? And that's not entirely different than what we're doing as coaches. What's really the important thing here? How does this relate to the other things here? How do I leave out the extraneous stuff? And so now that you're warmed up, I'm going to read a little coaching case study and allow you to do your own graphic recording of it. And I'm going to read it really nice and slow and just allow you to force yourself to use this graphic technique as a way to listen by noticing and making decisions on the fly. Is everyone ready? Hans, this is about Hans, like the German name Hans, is a secondary school teacher. He has a master's degree in education. Hans has 4 years of teaching experience in a private school in London. And he has 6 years of teaching experience at a private school in the United States. He speaks German and English fluently. Recently, he was hired by a well-established school in the United Arab Emirates. He's worked at the school for 2 weeks when he comes to you for coaching. As he tells you about his new role, he says he's really excited about the location. He's excited about the team that he works with. And he's really likes the way that the school equally emphasizes the arts, sports, academics, and character education. Because of his prior experience, Hans has been asked to mentor 3 other new hires. 2 of them are primary school teachers, and 1 is a secondary school teacher. Hans has come to you because in this regard, this mentorship regard, he feels like an imposter. Although he feels very confident as an instructor, he doesn't feel that he can mentor because he's just getting to know the school. He's unfamiliar with the school culture. And in fact, he's unfamiliar with the local culture in the United Arab Emirates. And he doesn't feel like he has expertise in primary school education. Remember, he's a secondary school teacher, and two of his mentees would be primary school teachers. He worries about failing them. He does not want to fail his mentees. But he also worries about challenging his boss's decision or refusing this request to mentor. He wonders aloud if he might be missing an opportunity if he refuses this role. He acknowledges to you that he's a pretty quick study and that he's pretty adaptable. But he also wonders if there might be someone on staff who would be a better fit and a better mentor. And it occurs to him, he sort of wonders aloud to you, why the administration didn't already ask that person if such a person exists. That's it. That's all. And I'm going to ask you a meta question. What did you notice about noticing in doing this?
I really noticed I didn't capture the details.
Tell me more. It's really interesting.
So his background around what schools he'd taught in, it's kind of there actually, interestingly, but I didn't capture the fact that he'd worked in primary and secondary, for example. I didn't capture, yeah. Yeah, I felt like I was trying to parse out PARSE, parse out those details.
I love it, Helen. What a great place for us to start, because we can just take this right back into coaching, right? How important are the details? I don't know. I don't have the answer to that. There is not an answer to that question, but it's a question worth considering for sure. I think there is a group of people that would say the details are vitally important. That's what you're going to ask about. Those are what you're going to draw upon. That's what you're going to explore. And by the same token, I might also say, might we be putting too much emphasis and might we be misappropriating our listening resources by trying to pick up every single little detail when instead of just trying to pick up like the big stuff or the stuff that really matters? Angela.
I found myself listening for the arc of the story and where is this going, and not really knowing when it was going to end, how long you were going to talk for. And the drawing, the illustration was helpful in capturing some of the things, but the story and where it was going took a lot of energy. I didn't remember that the secondary school detail, but I did remember the cultural context. So it was an interesting experience. Thank you.
Yeah, Angela, I love what you're saying. And I wrote especially the last part of it in a very particular way because clients will sometimes say, just like what Hans is saying, like, oh, I actually think this might be a great opportunity for me. And, I might be good at it because I'm a quick study and I'm really adaptable. On the other hand, wait a minute. Maybe I'll fail these people and maybe I'll get it wrong and maybe I'm not the best person. Wait, on the third hand, maybe there's someone who's a better fit. Wait, why didn't they ask that person? And that is kind of how our clients sometimes talk. They're kind of like going all over the place. They're round and around. And if you feel hell-bent on tracking all of that, it can be a bit exhausting for you. And you don't need to track it necessarily. You just need to notice, as Angela said, the arc. And what if you just commented your client on the arc? Wow, Hans, 3 hands so far, and you've only been talking 5 minutes. On the one hand, the other hand, and the third hand. Got a lot of hands. What do you make of that? Rather than you having to know what those hands are, know the veracity of those arguments. Vicky and then Samantha.
My thought was that I focus on the process rather than exactly, what we were saying, not on the detail. And actually, most of my capture is around these questions that he was asking himself. So most of my graphics focus on imposter syndrome with an upside down, like a smile, and failing, and then trying to, and lots of arrows looking at different things. So I think it's exactly what you said, Robert. Instead of me, which I tend to get obsessed about the detail. Now I'm just focusing on where he's taking, instead of all that stuff in the beginning might be relevant to some extent, but it's actually where he's got to at the end. I think that's starting to occur to me that maybe that's where we need to have a conversation about. Yeah, so that was
Yeah, I like it. It's what I would think of as thematic listening. And so this is one of the reasons why in active listening, I'm not repeating back, oh, so Hans, it sounds like you're excited about the school, but you also feel like an imposter, but you also are making a decision about mentoring, but you're also, I would never say that back to Hans. He knows that. He just said it to me. I was there. I heard it. But if what we think the big thing is that he doesn't want to fail people, right? That's the theme. We're listening for a theme. My summary might be, it's important to you to serve others effectively. And that might be all I say in response to all that stuff. That's essentially my verbal drawing of what he said. And when you pull those big themes, that often either, if you're a little wrong, they'll just correct you. They'll be like, well, it's not exactly that, it's this, which is fine. They still feel listened to. Or it's going to be a bullseye. And they're going to be like, that's exactly it. I really want to help. Right. And now you're into like the really good, deep stuff. Samantha.
I was just reflecting on what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about noticing nouns and how that example of the story sort of can trap you into noticing lots of nouns, noticing the stuff, the things that you did, or the nouns or the verbs, and the shift to sort of the thematic, sort of holistic, systemic lens, perhaps. Maybe the graphic recording sort of shows us how easy it is to get stuck into capturing. Oh, did I get that? Was it 4 years in a private school or 6 years in a private school? Oh, which one was in London? Which was who cares? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a relief to let ourselves off the hook for that. If you ever, this is one of the most common, Samantha, one of the most common things that people say in this activity, which is, I started initially trying to cling to every detail or trying to capture everything. And as it went, I just quit. And the further, I wasn't trying to like draw a symbol for every single little thing. And if you ever watch a graphic recorder at a conference, they tend not to start drawing right away. I mean, they might put the title up or the keyword, something like that, but they listen for a little bit. They're kind of like, where is this going? What is important? What are the key concepts? And they're listening for signals. Like if a speaker says, today I'll be presenting to you 3 things. And you can be guaranteed that the graphic recorder is going to write 1 and put a little circle around it because they know they're going to be drawing 3 things. They're looking for containers to understand and organize all this information. And I'm going to hold out to you that that's largely what you are as a coaching thought partner. You are working with them in part as a container for helping them to organize and notice their own thinking. They know the details. Hans knows how many years he taught at private school. You don't need to. Oh, Paul, yeah, thanks for sharing that. All right. One last thing. Are you ready for something slightly more provocative? I can almost not even say that with a straight face. Whatever our worldview is, whatever our coaching school we were trained in, whatever our beliefs are about human nature, that's guiding what we're listening to, what we're noticing. There's just no getting around that. And I'm going to give you 3 examples. Number 1, somatic coaching. I don't have any personal care one way or the other about these things, but I definitely come across coaches who are like, I'm a somatic coach. And I'm like, oh, then you're going to be noticing things related to the body. And you're going to be asking about those things. By definition, like that's what you do. You're already putting a framework on that's a lens that will guide your attention. Remember, your intention guides your attention. I would say your frameworks guide your attention. So I know right now that you're going to spend disproportionately more noticing on the body. I don't have a problem with that. I just think you ought to know that. And then they would ask their client things like, well, where in your body do you feel that? Perfectly fine first half of a question. That's right. I said perfectly fine first half of a question because it's only good if you can do something with it. If your client says, I feel it in my elbow, what are you going to do with that information? How's that going to be different than if your client says, I feel it in my chest? And if you can't make sense of the fact that it's the elbow versus the chest or that it's the head versus the stomach, then it's really not that useful to the client. So don't just have some thing that like, I think the body is important, therefore I'm going to attend to the body. It's got to be like a step further than that. It's great to attend to the body. I think the body probably ought to be attended to. But what exactly are you attending to? How are you using it? What are you missing because you're attending to it? Sometimes we have the same thing with our own understanding of human nature. You hear this all the time. We hold trauma in our cells of our body. Anger is an armor that protects sadness, right? Coaches say this stuff. You've heard it before. That's just what coaches are saying. I want you to understand that. That's not what science is saying. Science doesn't have a strong stance on armor. There's no scientific study that says anger is an armor that protects sadness. Not one published study on that. That's just a framework that you have that you might be thinking. That could be perfectly helpful for the client. I'm not trying to dismiss it, but I don't want you to believe that it's somehow the truth. I want you to distinguish between what's true and what's useful. Ideally, you could get both, but sometimes one, not the other. That's going to guide how you listen to people. So if someone says, I was angry, and you ask, what was under that anger? That's based on your framework, your assumption. Again, that might not be bad and it might be useful to the client. But the idea that something is under anger is coming from you. And that's guiding how you're noticing and what you're noticing. And here we get into the thing that's provocative. Self-limiting beliefs. And this is where I started, if you remember, all the way back to the very beginning. I've been a coach since 2023, 22 years of coaching. I don't think a single time have I ever engaged my client in challenging a self-limiting belief. And I'm a pretty effective coach. I mean, I'm a reasonable coach. I'm not the best coach, but I'm good enough, certainly. Never. And yet I know that this is an extraordinarily common way to interact with clients. I know that it is typically taught in coach training. And I also know that it's effective. So I don't want you to hear me as being dismissive of it. But I also want you to know that it's just your framework. And that if you are trained that clients have gremlins and self-limiting beliefs, and that part of moving forward is to challenge and get rid of those self-limiting beliefs, that 100% is directing your attention and what you're noticing. So you probably have an ear out for self-limiting beliefs. If the client says, I can't do it, you're like, ding, ding, ding. I heard it. I heard it because I'm like geared to hear that. Like that's where my radar tracking system is calibrated. What's the evidence for that? What makes you say that you can't do it? Have you gotten that kind of feedback? Can you prove that you can't do it? But it's interesting. If your client said, you know, I think I could do it, you wouldn't be like, I'd like to challenge you on that. Whoa, whoa, whoa. You just like, I can do it. I mean, really, where's the feedback that you could do it? Let me challenge you on that. I need you to provide lots of evidence that you could do it. We tend not to challenge people when they say something that we view as positive, and we tend to challenge them when they say something that we view as negative. It's super common. And the reason we do it is because it's, again, pretty effective. So I'm not dismissing it as a tool. I'm just pointing out that it's coming through a filter that is us. And I just want to point out that it's not wrong for you to have a framework by which you're listening to the client, but you ought to be aware of how that framework is directing your attention and what you're noticing. Because I'm not spending a lot of time noticing my client's self-limiting beliefs, just by way of contrast. And I don't think that makes me better than you at all, because I think you could be easily as effective or more effective as I am. But I do like the idea of listening for my client's strengths, because I generally think, and again, this is just my worldview, I generally think that clients enjoy an empowering conversation about what they do well and how they might use it, more than how they could go to war with themselves and defeat the worst part of themselves as they try and get better. I just think one of those is a more enlivening conversation than the other. I do have a little bit of research behind me to back that up, but I also admit that's just my coaching worldview. But I'm aware of how it's going to direct my noticing. I've got my ear out for strengths, for successes. Someone else has their ear out for self-limiting beliefs. Reactions, thoughts. And again, I just want to be clear. I think it's okay if you do that. 100%. I'm not condemning that as a behavior. Jen.
I do. I think in my coaching approach that I do strengths-based coaching, challenging myself on that as I hear you talk. And I am with you. Like it's a more pleasant experience when we do that as a coach for our coaches to do strengths-based over maybe honing in on, you said, going to war on the stuff that's the darker side. Do you have research on impact? Like in terms of if they've brought you on because I want growth, I want to be expanding, I work mainly with leaders. If we take a strengths-based approach over potentially working on areas where they're not doing as well, what's the impact?
The research is not as good as I would like it to be. So one of the things we can do is we can look at solutions-focused research, which is not exactly strengths-based, but it is if you engage in the client and what they want instead of what they don't want. So, oh, I don't want to give in to temptation. What would you like instead? I'd like to be a person with resolve, right? And so you're like, oh, let's talk about that. How do we make you into a person with resolve rather than defeat this weak person who gives in to temptation? Those are two totally different conversations. The research, largely out of University of Sydney, is suggestive that solutions-focused approaches are superior in many ways to problem-focused approaches or mixed approaches, in that people who go through these approaches are more likely to have higher motivation, more likely to make progress on or have goal attainment. And the big and here, Jen, is a lot of these are student samples, which isn't terrible. I mean, students are people too, but we don't have large scale community samples on this. So there are a few community samples, so I don't want to say that there's no research, but we're talking about handfuls of data, handfuls of studies, rather than a giant mountain of studies, which is why I mean, if you look at clinical psychology, a lot of it is about challenging negative beliefs and self-doubt. And there's a lot of studies that show that that's pretty effective. So, I'm not here to say that that's not effective. But we do know, and certainly from qualitative studies, some coming out of University of East London, that clients enjoy the strengths conversations more. That's just a more pleasant experience. What I would like to see is more studies saying, does that then mean that they continue on with coaching more, that they're sort of invested in the process more? We simply don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anyone else? Anything about how your own framework guides you're noticing? Okay, well, I'm gonna stop it there. I hope that this was useful to you in some ways. Vicky was like, don't just say all the stuff that Christian said, just do it on noticing. And I was like, 90 minutes on noticing, how will I fill the time? But I guess I can do it.
You did. You did. So, Robert, thank you so very much. And if you would like to put any thank you notes in the chat function that you'd like to thank Robert specifically for something. I've noticed a lot coming through about Robert, about people just really challenging their thinking and rethinking about how they're listening and where they're coming from. And certainly for me, a strong message has been, that intention leads to what you attend to and what you listen to. And I think if we can just be so much more aware of that as coaches. And I think also what I learned is that it's not saying one coach is wrong and the other one's right. It's about who we are as a coach and noticing who we are as a coach. So thank you very much, Robert, for sharing your thoughts. And I think for many people, if you have a look at the chat function, this has been pretty pivotal to their thoughts around how they coach and how they show up as a coach. I'd also like to end off the session. I'd also like to welcome any new members that we have joined us today. And I hope that this, just meeting Robert and understanding that this is a very vibrant and sharing coaching community and that we learn from each other. Catherine will also be putting up Queensland is hosting a Come and Connect end of year event next Thursday, the 20th. And she'll be put up the details there and the registration link. Or otherwise just email me and I can send it to you. So that's an opportunity, just like we've done today, where we come and connect with each other and share our learnings with each other and just celebrate the end of probably what's been a long year for many of us. So thank you. And also, of course, as I promised, we have a lucky dog prize. And these will be sent. So the two lucky members that we've given the lucky dog prize to, which is Robert's and Christian's book on radical listening. The one is Bernie Cooper. We'll send you an ebook. And the other one is Chris Gildersleeve, who's also a relatively new member to our area. So we'll send you. So thank you. And thank you so much, Robert. And it's been an absolute pleasure spending this time with you and really stimulating our thinking and sharing your thoughts. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
That was awesome. Lovely.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Vicky, do you want to stay on?
I'll do that, yeah. Have you stopped the recording?
Oh.
Cool.
Do you want me to stay on? You want me to leave?